Welcome back to the deep dive. So, you've brought in some really interesting material for us this week. It seems to circle around this whole idea of, well, personal transformation, but also that feeling of being stuck.
Exactly. Yeah, we're looking at a transcript from a YouTube channel, Speak English with Class, and it's called English Podcast for Learning English. This video will change your life. A bold title, right?
Yep. Yeah, no kidding.
But what's cool is how it uses learning English, that whole journey, as a kind of metaphor, really, for how people make bigger life changes.
Okay, so not just about learning English then.
Not solely, no. It gets into the how and the why change happens or doesn't. So our mission today, based on what you're looking for, is to pull out the really practical stuff, how to get started, push past those
Tips,
hurdles,
locks, yeah.
and actually build some momentum if you're feeling, stuck.
Right. Okay, so the transcript dives right in with this big question, and I think it's one that probably resonates with a lot of people listening. Why do some people just seem to manage this huge transformation, like they completely change their life, while others, well, they just seem to stay in the same place?
Year after year, same patterns.
Exactly. So if you've ever felt that way, like wanting something different but just not knowing how to get there, this is kind of the central puzzle the source digs into.
It really makes you think, doesn't it?
Yeah.
What is the difference maker? The transcript suggests it's maybe less about just wanting it and more about how we actually approach that desire. Have you seen that? Like, what stands out when you see someone really make a big shift?
Oh, definitely. And the first big barrier they mention is one I think we can all relate to, fear of failure.
Yep. Classic.
That little voice, right? What if I try and it says, "Count on." But I liked their counterpoint in the video transcript. Okay, but what if you try and it does work?
Right. Flips the script.
And they point out, successful people, they've usually failed a lot, probably. It's the getting back up part.
And that ties into, I think, how we see ourselves, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like, is failure a final verdict, or is it just data?
Mm.
The transcript, especially using language learning as the example where mistakes are unavoidable,
You have to make mistakes.
it pushes back against that fixed idea of talent.
Mhm.
Those failures are maybe just learning moments, finding out what doesn't work so you can adjust.
Okay. Then another big one they mention is not having clear direction. That feeling of, okay, I want things to change, but you're just staring at a fog, right? No idea which way to go first.
Yeah, the blank map feeling.
And this belief you need some perfect, detailed plan before you can even start.
Which, it's interesting, that need for a perfect plan can sometimes just be, well, a fancy way to procrastinate, can it?
Huh. Yeah, I could see that.
The transcript kind of implies that just starting, even if you're not totally sure where you're going, that's what brings the clarity. Like feeling your way in the dark. You take a step, you bump into something. Okay, now you know where the table is.
Right, right. Action eliminates the path. Okay. Then there's the inner critic, negative self-talk.
Ugh, yeah, that one's tough.
Those thoughts like, I'm just not cut out for this, or I'll start, but I know I won't stick with it, they really stress how that internal chatter can just kill your efforts before you even, give it a proper shot.
It's so powerful, that inner voice. And later on, they bring up something called the reticular activating system, the RAS.
Okay.
Think of it like your brain's bouncer. It decides what gets attention based on what you focus on. So if you're constantly telling yourself, I can't do this, your RAS literally starts looking for proof
Oh, wow.
and shows you evidence that confirms that belief, makes it feel even more real. It's a loop.
A self-fulfilling prophecy, kind of.
Exactly. And the last big barrier they flag, waiting for motivation. Just waiting for that lightning bolt of inspiration to strike before you do anything.
Oh, that's a huge one. We all do that sometimes.
But the transcript really flips that. It says pretty clearly, motivation usually follows action. It doesn't come first.
So you don't wait to feel motivated, you act, and then you feel motivated.
Pretty much. They even shared a story, someone waiting for the perfect moment for ages, and then realizing, oh wait, just taking that first step, even when I didn't feel like it, that's what actually sparked the motivation.
That's a big shift in how we normally think about it. Action creates the spark, not the other way around.
Yeah, that first little win, that sense of, okay, I did something, that fuels you to do the next thing.
Okay, so those are the things holding us back. But then they shift gears, right? How do we actually start making changes? And they introduce this idea, the 1% rule. Small daily improvements.
The 1% rule, it sounds tiny, like getting 1% better each day seems insignificant.
Right, what's 1%?
But the math is crazy. Do that every day for a year, and you're not just a bit better, you're like 37 times better.
Whoa, okay. 37 times.
Yeah, it's the power of compounding, like interest in a bank account, right?
Okay.
Each little improvement builds on the last one. Suddenly, small efforts create this massive snowball effect over time.
It makes big change feel, well, less impossible, more manageable. Focus on the tiny step today.
They mentioned James Clear, too, Atomic Habits.
Ah, yeah. Great book.
And his whole thing is how these tiny habits don't just change what you do, they actually change who you are. Your identity shifts.
How so?
Well, every time you do that small positive thing, say 10 push-ups, you're casting a vote for being the kind of person who exercises. It's not just wishful thinking anymore. You're building evidence for that new identity.
I like that. Casting a vote. And they gave practical examples, right? Like read for 10 minutes, practice English for 5 minutes.
Exactly. Simple stuff. Even positive affirmations. And they shared that really cool story about someone becoming fluent just by listening to podcasts every day.
That's inspiring. It shows you don't need these massive, life-altering upheavals necessarily.
Nope. It's about consistency with the small stuff you can actually stick with.
So the big message there is, consistency with small actions is the engine. Makes you think, what's one tiny thing I could start today?
Right. And building on that consistency idea, they then talk a lot about mindset.
Yeah.
Specifically, growth mindset versus fixed mindset.
Okay, break that down.
Growth mindset is believing you can develop your abilities, get smarter, get better with effort. Fixed mindset is more like, well, this is just how smart I am, or I'm just not good at languages. It's set in stone.
And that's crucial, isn't it? Because it links back to that RES thing you mentioned.
Exactly, the brain filter. If you believe you can improve, growth mindset, your brain starts noticing opportunities to learn, ways to get better.
Yeah.
If you believe you're stuck, fixed mindset.
Your brain looks for evidence that you are indeed stuck.
You got it. It primes you to see what you already believe, like buying a certain type of car, and suddenly you see it everywhere.
Huh. Yeah, that happens. So how do they suggest we cultivate that growth mindset then?
They give 3 main tools, really. Affirmations, visualization, and gratitude.
Okay. Affirmations like telling yourself positive things.
Yeah, simple statements like, I'm capable of learning this, or I'm getting better every day. Just consciously feeding your brain positive input to counter the negative self-talk.
And visualization.
That's about picturing yourself succeeding, like really vividly imagining yourself navigating that challenge successfully. It builds belief, makes it feel possible.
Right, and gratitude. How does that fit?
Focusing on what you do have, what's going well, even small things. It shifts your focus away from lack or problems and towards abundance and possibility.
Okay.
Opens your eyes to opportunities you might have missed.
So it's like training your brain, basically. Not magic, but practice.
Yeah.
Conditioning it to work for you.
Precisely. That leads to the next point they tackle, which is related to this tendency we have to wait for the right moment.
Ah, yes, the mythical right moment.
They basically say, look, you're probably never going to feel 100% ready.
Ooh, that hits home. There's always a reason to wait, isn't there? Need more time, more energy, better mood.
Exactly. But they push this idea, done is better than perfect.
I love that. Done is better than perfect.
It's about just starting, getting something out there, even if it's flawed, rather than waiting forever to create some masterpiece that never actually happens.
Yeah.
They use the English-speaking example, again, being scared to talk because you might make mistakes. But realizing, wait, making mistakes is the path to getting better. Practice builds the confidence.
So the message is basically, stop waiting, pick something you've been putting off.
And just take one tiny step today, not tomorrow, today.
Because that action breaks the inertia, right? It creates momentum.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That first step makes the second step easier, and suddenly you're moving. It builds confidence as you go. It's a positive feedback loop.
Okay, this is all really practical. Then they shift again, looking outwards at our environment.
Yeah, this is a big one that maybe we don't always think about. Our surroundings, the people, the stuff we read or watch, the general vibe, it all shapes us.
Totally.
Often subtly, yeah.
Mm.
It feeds us cues, influences our habits or decisions, sometimes without us even realizing it.
They use that saying, don't they? You're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
Mm-hmm. That one really makes you pause and think, doesn't it? The energy, the habits, the mindset of the people around you, it inevitably rubs off.
So it's not about, like, ditching all your friends.
No, not necessarily. But it's about being more aware of the influence. Are the people you hang out with most lifting you up, supporting your growth? Or are they kind of keeping you stuck in old ways?
Makes sense. And they give tips for creating a more supportive environment.
Yeah, practical things like consciously following people who inspire you online, authors, speakers, just getting more positive input.
Okay. What else?
Yeah. Joining communities, online groups maybe, people learning the same thing like English learners or book clubs or, personal growth groups. That sense of shared purpose can be huge.
Provides encouragement, maybe some accountability too.
Definitely. And just as important, they say, is limiting the negative influences. Maybe spending less time with people who only complain or cutting back on news or social media. That just brings you down.
Being mindful of what you let into your headspace.
Exactly. They shared another personal story, I think, about feeling stuck learning English until he joined a group, a community. That environment made a real difference.
So it's that combination of resources and just encouragement, shared energy.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
So the challenge there is to actually reflect, who are those 5 people I interact with most? And are they helping me move towards where I want to go? And then actively seeking out more uplifting influences.
Cultivating your environment intentionally.
And then just briefly at the end, they touched on vocabulary related to all this. Like having the words to talk about growth and mindset can actually help the process.
Right, giving you language to frame your experience. Okay, so wrapping this up then, what's the big picture takeaway from this source?
I think the main message is really one of empowerment. It's saying you actually have more control than you think. Small steps, your mindset, your environment, these aren't small things. They're powerful levers you can actually use.
Levers for change. It's a process, right? Not instant.
Definitely not instant. It's gradual. There'll be ups and downs. But
Yes.
every little bit counts. Every small action, every time you catch negative self-talk, every choice you make about your environment, it all adds up.
It really is. Okay, so a final thought to leave our listeners with, maybe building on all this.
Yeah, maybe think about those 3 big areas we discussed. The small, consistent steps, cultivating that growth mindset, and shaping your environment. Which one of those feels like it resonates most with where you are right now? Where's the biggest friction, maybe?
Interesting question.
Perhaps just picking one of those areas to focus on first, to explore a bit deeper for yourself, could be a really powerful place to start.